Everyone in the party called him useless, and the worst part, he built that party himself. Orhan wanders through the dungeon alone, moving like a man who's lost more than just a job. He hasn't held a sword in what feels like years, and the rust shows. When a demon rat charges at him from the shadows, he draws his blade and cuts it down. One clean strike, but not clean enough. He knows it. He can feel the stiffness in his wrist, the half-second delay that wasn't there before. More rats come rushing in, drawn by the noise. But these things are nothing to a man who once led the strongest party in the country. He puts them all down without breaking a sweat, and as he stands over the pile of glowing cores scattered across the dungeon floor, something stirs inside him. Maybe he's not as broken as he thought. That thought doesn't last long. A circle of goblins closes in around him. Bigger, meaner, nothing like the rats. Orhan doesn't hesitate. He casts his support magic on himself, a reinforcement spell that floods his body with raw power, sharpens his reflexes, and turns his blade into something far more dangerous. The goblins rush him all at once, and he cuts through them like they're made of paper, moving with a speed and precision that speaks of someone who has cleared floors far deeper and far darker than this one. He almost catches his breath. Almost. A second wave crashes in before he can lower his guard. His enchantment is burning through its time limit, and he knows it. So instead of pulling back, he goes harder, driving into the wave head-on, chasing one fleeing goblin to the end of the corridor just to make sure it doesn't come back. The buff wears off. 3 minutes. That's the window. He files that away. It's not a flaw, it's a parameter he can work with. Then the third wave hits. He casts the enchantment again near the tail end of the fight, timing it just right to carry him through the last few goblins. And when the final one drops, silence finally settles over the dungeon floor. In that silence, a memory rises to the surface, and it's worse than any goblin horde. He sees it again. Oliver walking into his study. Al and Dirk flanking him like prosecutors. Their fate is already decided. Oliver tells him plainly, without flinching, that he's being removed from the party. Orhan stands there and can't process it. He and Oliver grew up in the same village. They built this party together from nothing. He asks Oliver what he's talking about, and Oliver tells him the truth, with the coldness of someone who had made up his mind long before walking through that door. That friendship doesn't cancel out dead weight. Anne doesn't even try to be diplomatic. She tells him he's been slowing them down. Dirk agrees. They'd watched another party during a joint dungeon run, seen what a real enchanter looked like, and decided that Orhan wasn't one. He tries to fight back. He tells them he was never supposed to be an enchanter, that he took on the role because nobody else in the party had any aptitude for magic, and he sacrificed his identity as a swordsman to fill that gap. He created his own spells from scratch to make up for raw talent he didn't have. He gave up who he was for this party. Anne laughs in his face. He turns to Oliver, his last hope, and Oliver tells him they've already found a replacement, a real enchanter, someone who will take them higher than Orhan ever could. And just like that, the decision is final. He turns to leave, and Anne fires one last shot at his back. That his swordsmanship and his magic are both sitting at A rank, making him a jack of all trades and master of none, which in her estimation makes him pathetic. He snaps back to the present, standing in the dungeon with goblin cores at his feet. He thinks about what Anne said. Jack of all trades. Fine, he'll be a jack of all trades, and he'll master every single one of them. Before he can even make it to the exit, 4 adventurers come sprinting into the teleportation room, breathless, wide-eyed, falling over each other to get through the door. Their leader bends over, hands on his knees, relieved to be alive. One of the others speaks up and mentions, almost as an afterthought, that they left the girl behind. The leader doesn't even flinch. He says he made the right call. If they tried to save her, they would have all died. And besides, she only joined the party that day. His older friends came first. The wound in Orhan's chest is still raw, too raw. He turns toward the men and tells them flatly that he despises people like them. One of them steps forward trying to argue, says there was nothing they could do. Another one tries to take a swing at Orhan. That goes about as well as you'd expect. Orhan puts them on the floor without much effort, tells them all to shut their mouths and get out of his sight. Then he turns to the leader and asks, loudly, with barely contained fury, where exactly they left her. The leader gives up the location without another word, and Orhan is already moving. He finds her at the back of a cave, cornered against a stone wall with what looks like an entire army of orcs bearing down on her. She's pressing herself into the rock, eyes wet, using every ounce of concentration she has left to hold up her defensive shield. The shield is failing. The orcs can see it too. They're taking their time now, letting it crack. The shield shatters. The orcs move in. Orhan hits them with a blast of wind magic that sends the front line stumbling backward, buying her exactly enough time to breathe. The girl looks up, stunned and dazed, not sure what just happened or where this man even came from. Orhan doesn't pause to introduce himself. His sword is already out. The first orc throws everything it has at him, a full body charge aimed at driving him into the ground. Orhan blocks it cold, absorbs the impact and then counters with his reinforcement magic active, cutting through the monster's guard like it isn't there. The girl watches from behind him, trying to figure out what she's seeing. Is he a swordsman? Is he a mage? He's using enchantment magic to sharpen his blade, and then he's carving through weapons and bodies with the kind of efficiency that doesn't belong on these floors. He thinks to himself, the cowards were right. No normal party could have handled this many orcs at once, but he would rather die down here than walk away from someone who needed him. He doesn't die. He tears through the horde in 2 clean sweeps, and when the last orc hits the ground, the cave is quiet except for the sound of glowing cores settling on the stone. He turns toward the red-haired girl at the back of the cave and finds her already collapsing, the adrenaline giving out all at once, legs folding underneath her. By the time they make it out of the dungeon and the sun is going down, the girl has gathered herself enough to introduce herself. Her name is Sophia, and she wants to take him to dinner. Orhan accepts, and she leads him to a tavern connected to the Silver Rabbit Guild. He can tell by the crest on her cape. Inside, he's introduced to Sophia's older sister, who turns out to be someone Orhan already knows by reputation. Selma, the strongest enchanter in the country, the woman who practically invented the modern party structure, attacker, tank, and support mage, the framework that every serious dungeon party in the country now runs on. Selma's first reaction to seeing Orhan is suspicion. She squints at him and says she might have to call the authorities because her sister is 14. Orhan tells her his name is not in any questionable records and she can relax. Sophia cuts in and explains that this man saved her life. Selma uncrosses her arms. She scolds Sophia for going into a dungeon without telling her, then turns the conversation toward Orhan. He tells her the truth, that he was kicked out of the hero's party and he's currently between everything. Between guilds, between identities, between lives. He watches Selma's eyes light up the moment he says it, and he knows exactly what she's thinking before she can say a word. He tells her he's not looking to join any party right now. Selma tells him not to flatter himself. She has a job offer, not a recruitment pitch. She lays it out plainly. The Silver Rabbit Guild is running a teaching expedition into the dungeon the next morning. 10 rookie parties, 5 escort veterans, 3 days, 51 floors. The escorts are there to make sure no one dies and the floor bosses get handled. She wants Orhan as a 6th escort, an extra set of hands she trusts. She adds, almost carefully, that she respects his abilities, that she wouldn't have asked otherwise. That lands harder than she probably intended it to, because the whole reason Orhan got kicked out in the first place was because Oliver watched Selma perform during a joint dungeon run, watched her enchantment magic light up the cave, and decided that whatever Orhan was doing didn't measure up. Selma's excellence had become the measuring stick that got him removed, and now here she was, telling him she respected him. He agrees to the job. One condition, he goes in as a swordsman. He is done pretending to be a mage. Selma isn't entirely comfortable with that, but she decides getting him on board matters more than arguing the point. She figures that once things get dangerous enough, he'll fall back into a support role on instinct. After dinner, Orhan heads to a weapons and armor shop he knows well. The old man behind the counter greets him like a returning soldier. Warm, no questions, just genuine happiness to see him walk through the door. This man has been Orhan's gear supplier since the very beginning, back when Orhan was nobody, long before the hero's party had a name or a reputation. Orhan sits down across from him and tells him the truth. He's not in the hero's party anymore, which means his endorsements mean nothing now. Nobody is going to care what weapons he uses or where he buys his armor. He apologizes for the lost business, for whatever damage the association might do to the old man's shop. The old man smiles and tells him not to be ridiculous. He thanks Orhan for everything he's done over the years, and then he says something simple, that people will still listen to him because he's a genuinely good person, and strong ones who are genuinely good always find their way back up. Orhan doesn't have a response for that. He just sits there for a moment, and something in his chest cracks open. Not from pain this time, but from the unexpected weight of being believed in. He makes a quiet promise to himself. He's going to rebuild from the ground up, and he's going to do it right. The next morning, Sophia walks him to the Silver Rabbit Guild headquarters to meet the clan's leader, a man named Vince. The building alone tells you everything about the guild's standing. Imposing, well kept, the kind of place that carries history in its walls. Vince greets Orhan without ceremony and tells him immediately to drop the formalities. He's not interested in pleasantries. He wants to know what the other person is actually thinking. Orhan appreciates that more than he lets on. Vince turns the floor over to Selma, who walks through the expedition plan with clean precision. 3 days. Day 1 takes the parties from the first floor down to the 21st. Day 2 pushes from 21 to 36. Day 3 closes it out at the 51st floor. 10 rookie parties, 5 escort veterans, and now Orhan. While she talks, Orhan notices she's skipping something. He listens to her official reasoning for why they're only using 5 elite escorts instead of a larger group of mid-ranked adventurers. She claims it's to make sure the rookies still experience the real pressure of dungeon clearing, that if they overstaff the protection detail, the beginners will never develop a proper sense of danger. Orhan doesn't believe a word of it. There's another reason for the lean roster, and they're not going to tell an outsider what it is. He files that away too, right next to the 3-minute buff window, and decides to keep moving. Vince announces the pay. 2 gold pieces up front, 10 more on completion. Orhan blinks. That's a year's salary for most people. He asks whether that's too much. Selma tells him it reflects what they think he's worth. He thanks them and promises to be at the dungeon entrance the next morning. The next morning, the dungeon entrance is already crowded by the time Orhan arrives. Dozens of nervous rookies, freshly equipped, trying to look more confident than they feel. Sophia and Selma are already there, and Orhan compliments Selma on her outfit, which earns him an immediate elbow from Sophia, who reminds him, again, that she is 14 years old. Orhan tells her to relax and that he is not a fan of that kind of thing either. Sophia asks where he's been sleeping since he got kicked out. He used to live in the mansion owned by the hero's party, and now that's obviously gone. He tells her he's at an inn for now and that he'll sort out something more permanent soon. Then he looks around, counts heads, and decides everyone who needs to be here is here. Time to move. Selma agrees and directs Sophia toward the group before steering Orhan toward the other 3 escorts he'll be working alongside. She introduces them one by one. The blue-haired one is Ant, a tank. The blonde one is Bern, also a tank. The short-haired woman is Kathy, a healer. Orhan does the math instantly. With himself as the frontline attacker and Selma as enchanter, this is an exceptionally well-balanced escort squad. Almost suspiciously well-balanced. He finds himself wondering, not for the first time, what exactly is being planned for this expedition that requires this level of preparation. He keeps the thought to himself. Selma gathers the rookies and makes a point of introducing Orhan properly, telling them that he has reached the 94th floor, which even she has never done, and that he was a core member of the hero's party. The effect is immediate. Backs straighten, eyes go wide. The anxiety in the crowd drops by half. Orun stands there absorbing all of it, feeling the sudden weight of being someone's safety net. Then she tells him which rookie party he'll be leading, the 10th group, supposedly the most talented of the bunch. She says it with complete confidence, which immediately makes Orun suspicious, because giving your most promising students to the outside hire instead of your own veteran escorts is not something you do unless those students come with a catch. He finds out what the catch is almost immediately. The 10th party consists of exactly 3 people. A blonde boy named Logan, who announces within the first 30 seconds that he intends to surpass Selma as an enchanter, and who carries himself with the specific kind of arrogance that only belongs to someone who has never yet been genuinely humbled. A girl named Carol, who introduces herself as a tank, but is wearing no armor whatsoever. Her entire defensive strategy is based on speed and dodging, which works beautifully in theory and catastrophically in practice for anyone without real combat experience. And Sophia, who Orun already knows and who turns out to be the most quietly capable of the 3, despite being the one with the least raw talent. He asks Carol whether the guild warned her about going armorless. Logan answers for her, says the clan told her multiple times to use standard gear until she built up her experience, and she ignored them every single time. Orun looks at these 3 people. He looks at Selma. He understands now why nobody else wanted this group. They enter the dungeon. Carol does not stop talking for the entire descent. She wants to know why Orun left the hero's party. She wants to know what the deeper flaws look like. She wants to know everything except what she actually needs to focus on. Orun sets magical traps behind the group as they move. Automatic tripwire spells that handle the smaller monsters without anyone needing to break stride, because he has no interest in wasting time on fights that don't need to happen. By the time they reach the 20th floor, he has a clear read on all 3 of them. Logan is not just talk. Underneath the attitude is a genuinely impressive enchanter who already operates at a level most A-rank parties would be grateful for. His problem isn't skill, it's direction. He doesn't yet understand how to read a fight and deploy his magic at the right moment for the right person. The talent is there, the judgment isn't yet. Carol is fast, genuinely, startlingly fast, which is exactly what a dodge-type tank needs. But she has 2 problems that could get her killed. The first is that she treats the front line like a personal hunting ground rather than a defensive position. The second is that her twin daggers, while perfect for her style, simply may not carry enough stopping power when she eventually faces something that doesn't go down in 2 hits. Sophia is the least talented of the 3 on paper, but she has no catastrophic flaws, reads situations clearly, and doesn't let her ego get in the way of doing what's needed. In a real crisis, she might be the steadiest one in the room. The escort team clears the floor 20 boss without any real trouble. The rookies register their dungeon ID cards as proof of completion, and the first day comes to a close. They exit the dungeon as the daylight starts to fade, and everyone splits off to eat, sleep, and prepare for the push to floor 36 tomorrow. Orun wakes up the next morning and finds a newspaper waiting for him. His own face stares back at him from the front page. The hero's party has made it official. In print, for the entire country to read, they have announced that Orun has been removed from the roster and replaced with a new enchanter. The article doesn't soften it, it uses the word kicked. It lists the reasons, and it puts his name and his failure right there on the front page where every single person he's about to walk into the dungeon with will have already read it over breakfast. He sits with it for a moment. He knew this was coming. That doesn't make it easier. He gets up, gets dressed, and heads out toward the dungeon entrance, running the numbers in his head. The rookies had looked at him yesterday like he was someone worth following. That was before the headline. Today is going to be different. He doesn't make it far before someone steps into his path. A blue-haired girl, moving quickly, clearly having waited for him. It's Luna, the healer of the hero's party. He remembers her well. During those final ugly weeks when Oliver and the others had already gone cold, Luna was still smiling at him, still treating him like he belonged. She wasn't there the evening they kicked him out. She'd been on an errand. If she had been in that room, things might have gone differently. She grabs both his hands and begs him to come back. She tells him she will fix it, that she'll make the others understand how much they need him, how wrong they were. She brings up the promise they all made together, the three of them, Orhan, Oliver, Luna, to clear the Great Dungeon side by side. That promise is exactly the wrong thing to bring up. Orhan pulls his hands back. He tells her that promise was made by all three of them, and Oliver is the one who broke it first. He is not going back, not ever. He says it without cruelty, but with the kind of finality that doesn't leave room for argument. Then he turns around and keeps walking. He arrives at the dungeon entrance and the energy hits him immediately. Yesterday, this crowd had been nervous but eager. Today, it's different. Quieter, heavier. The way a room gets when everyone knows something and nobody wants to be the first one to say it out loud. Every single rookie here has read the paper. He can see it in the way they're standing, the way conversations stop a half second too long when he walks past. Logan is the one thinking about it the hardest. He turns it over in his mind. There's a difference between a man who walked away from a legendary party on his own terms and a man who got thrown out of it for being too weak. The newspaper was very clear about which one this was. Everything Selma told them yesterday about Orhan's greatness now has an asterisk next to it. Orhan tries to greet the group and gets back a scattered, uncertain response. The warmth from yesterday is gone. He can feel the distance like a change in temperature. Then Selma arrives with Ant, Bern and Kathy and immediately turns to Orhan to apologize. She's the one who built him up in front of the rookies, used his connection to the heroes' party as the selling point. She put him in this position, even if she didn't intend to. Orhan cuts her off before she can finish. He tells her it's not her fault. He tells her to hold her head up and lead the group into the dungeon, and he'll handle his end. Ant, Bern and Kathy step in without being asked. They tell the rookies plainly, whatever the situation is between Orhan and the heroes' party is between Orhan and the heroes' party. What isn't up for debate is that this man has been to the 94th floor and come back alive. That fact doesn't change because of a newspaper. The tension in the crowd loosens slightly. Not all the way, but enough. Orhan walks over to his group. Sophia and Carol both greet him like nothing happened, warm and direct, which does more for him than he'd care to admit. Logan hangs back, visibly uncertain, not sure how to recalibrate. Orhan decides to handle it head on. He asks his party whether they saw the paper. Sophia and Carol both say they did, and that it wasn't worth reading because it was full of nonsense. Logan, however, wants the actual truth. He asks Orhan directly whether what the paper said was accurate. Orhan tells him yes, technically it was accurate. He was banished from the party because they decided he wasn't strong enough. He doesn't dress it up or make excuses, he just says it plainly and lets it sit. Logan doesn't know what to do with that. He feels something close to betrayal, not because Orhan lied to him, but because he had started to believe in the version of Orhan that Selma described, and now that version has a crack running through it. Sophia can't take the silence. She pushes back hard, tells Orhan and the rest of the group that she watched this man fight off an entire horde of orcs alone without slowing down once, and whatever that newspaper says, it doesn't match what she saw with her own eyes. Orhan thanks her. Then he turns to the whole group and tells them plainly, he may not be in the heroes' party anymore, but he is more than capable of getting all of them to the 51st floor safely. He asks them to trust him, not blindly, just enough to keep moving. The girls are with him. Logan is still deciding, but they step forward into the dungeon regardless, and the second day begins. The second day's goal is to push from the 21st floor all the way down to the 35th. Orhan is not supposed to give orders or lead the charge. His role is to stay back, observe, and only step in if things start going genuinely wrong. He watches his party move through the middle floors and lets them work. Carol handles the 24th floor like she was born for it. Twin daggers flashing, moving in tight, getting so close to the monsters that most fighters would panic. But she doesn't panic. She's in her element when the fight is personal and immediate, and she tears through the floor's creatures with a speed that makes it look effortless. Orhan watches and makes notes in the back of his mind. Sophia surprises him on the 30th floor. She takes on one of the larger monsters with a directness that Orhan hadn't expected from her, and she handles it cleanly. He realizes he may have underestimated her on day one. The girl is steadier than she looks. Then they hit the 31st floor, and everything shifts. This is the middle floors, unfamiliar territory for rookies, the point where the dungeon stops feeling like a training ground and starts feeling like something that could actually kill you. Orhan moves to the front now, walking ahead of the group, scanning the air and the stone walls for anything out of place. He feels them before he hears them. A cluster of goblins tucked into a side passage, waiting. And threading through the same space, a stray orc that has wandered in from a different corridor, which complicates things considerably. He calls it out calmly and tells the party to get ready. He puts Carol on the goblins and Sophia on the orc, then turns to Logan and tells him to start casting support spells. Logan doesn't wait for him to finish the sentence. He already has 5 magic circles spinning in the air around Carol, stacking agility buffs on her before Orhan can close his mouth. The speed of it is impressive. The instinct is real. Logan still doesn't respect Orhan, not fully. He follows the instructions because they're tactically sound, not because he believes in the man giving them. In the back of his mind, he's telling himself that anyone with basic combat experience would have made the same calls. Then the orc turns towards Sophia and something goes wrong. She freezes. The orc triggers something in her. The same panic that nearly got her killed the first day Orhan met her, cornered against a cave wall with her shield giving out. Her body remembers that moment even when her mind is trying to push forward. She can't find her footing. She can't breathe right. And Logan is already committed to Carol's buffs, his attention locked in the other direction, unable to redirect. Orhan moves without making a sound. He doesn't rush at the orc. He raises one hand and casts a debuff, a clean, quiet agility reduction that drops the orc's speed dramatically, turning a charging monster into something slow and manageable. Then he steps up beside Sophia, keeps his voice completely level, and tells her to take her time, to aim true. She's stronger than this thing, and she knows it. Sophia breathes. She pulls herself back together. She raises her hand, and what comes out is not a small cautious spell. It's a full force fireball that hits the orc like a wall and reduces it to nothing. The cave goes quiet. Everyone in the party stares. Even Orhan, who thought he had a fair read on Sophia's ability, takes a moment to recalibrate. He had no idea she could do that. Carol sprints back and wraps her arms around Sophia before the smoke clears. Orhan praises Sophia for the shot, genuinely, without exaggeration, and they keep moving. The 35th floor brings a death tarantula. Logan sees it first, and his confidence evaporates on the spot. He looks at the thing, massive, venomous, fast for something that size, and his brain goes immediately to the conclusion that they are finished. He is not a coward, he is just doing math, and the math doesn't look good. Sophia and Carol don't panic. They look at Orhan and wait. He tells Logan to stack agility and strength on Carol and push magic power onto Sophia. Logan's face says everything. This is the same strategy as before. Nothing new, nothing creative, and they're standing in front of a death tarantula. But he does it anyway, and he does it fast. Orhan tells Carol to go in close and hold its attention. Logan grabs his arm to stop him, tries to tell him that sending Carol into melee range with that thing is suicide. Orhan stops him and tells him quietly but firmly that if Logan steps out front right now, every tactical advantage they have disappears. He tells him to wait and watch. Carol runs at the tarantula without hesitation. Orhan turns to Sophia and tells her to get on top of it, climb its body and run her blade from its head to its back. Sophia understands immediately and moves. She leaps onto the monster's head and opens a long, ugly wound down its spine. The tarantula twists and screams and turns all its attention upward. Orhan calls to Sophia. Keep it focused on her, but stay light on her feet. The thing is venomous and one solid hit ends the fight badly. She nods and keeps moving, drawing its attention while Carol works the legs from below. The spider drives its pointed legs down at Carol, one after the other, and she reads every single attack before it lands, deflecting, ducking, turning the monster's momentum against itself. Logan watches her and feels something shift inside him. These instructions aren't simple, they're precise. They're turning 3 separate fighters into a single working machine, and he hadn't seen it until right now. Then the tarantula catches Carol. A web shoots out and wraps around her before she can react, and the monster starts reeling her in. She panics and starts pulling against it, but panicking is exactly the wrong move. The web pulls tighter. She calls out for help. Orhan tells Logan to hit her with strength and speed immediately. Logan does it without argument. Carol strains against the web and starts to push free, but she's not quite there yet. Orhan tells Sophia to ready her rock arrow technique and simultaneously cast a sharpness enhancement on Carol's daggers, a targeted boost that cuts the web clean and drops Carol back to her feet. Sophia fires. The rock arrow detonates against the tarantula with a force that shuts everything down in an instant. The monster drops and the 35th floor is clear. The sun is going down by the time they exit the cave. Selma gathers all the rookies and tells them they've done exceptional work over the first 2 days, and the final push happens tomorrow. She tells them to eat well and sleep properly. The group disperses. Orhan starts to head off on his own when Ant and Byrne fall into step beside him and ask if he wants to grab a meal on their tab. He thinks about it for a second, decides that a free meal is a free meal, and says yes. On the walk back through the city, Logan pulls Sophia aside and starts asking questions. He wants to know exactly what happened the day Orhan saved her, what spells he used, what the fight looked like up close. Sophia thinks back and tells him what she remembers. Wind magic first, pushing the orcs off her. Then some kind of enhancement cast on his sword before he started cutting. Logan listens carefully and doesn't say much. Because what's bothering him isn't what Sophia saw, it's what he saw today. That debuff on the orc, the agility reduction Orhan dropped so casually, almost as an afterthought while everything else was happening around him. Logan knows exactly what that spell is and exactly how difficult it is to execute. Debuff magic is not something you learn in a classroom and practice until it clicks. Even the most decorated mages in the country can barely produce a single debuff after days of preparation and careful setup. Orhan threw one out mid-combat in real time without breaking his focus on anything else. And it wasn't just the debuff. Logan replays the entire day in his head. Orhan knew when each of his buff spells would wear off before Logan did. He positioned Carol and Sophia not for the fight they were currently in, but for the fight as it was going to unfold 30 seconds later. He used a preemptive trap to neutralize the wolves before they could close the distance, which meant he had already calculated their approach vector and acted on it before they appeared. Every decision today had that same quality, not reactive but anticipatory, not strong but precise. Logan had told himself this morning that Orhan's tactics were simple, that anyone with experience would make the same calls. He sits with that thought now and realizes it isn't true. He got Orhan wrong, badly wrong. This man is not a disgraced enchanter coasting on an old reputation. He is something Logan doesn't have a clean category for yet. Across town, Orhan settles into a tavern booth with Ant and Byrne, who immediately tell him to order whatever he wants. They're relaxed, genuine, the kind of people who've been in enough dungeons together that they skip the performance and go straight to the actual conversation. They ask him about his background. He was an enchanter in the hero's party, that much they know, but now he says he's a swordsman. Which one is he really? Orhan tells them the truth, and it goes further back than either of them expected. He tells them about his grandfather, an old man in a small village who one day stepped out into the street and put down a massive beast that had wandered in from the wilderness. One clean, unhurried motion, the kind of thing that looks simple because the person doing it has spent a lifetime making it simple. Orhan was young enough that the image burned itself into his memory permanently. He decided then that no matter what else happened in his life, he was going to be a swordsman. That wish came true for a while. He was the attacker in the hero's party, and he was good at it. Then the party started pushing deeper, and the floors got harder, and their pace slowed down because the monsters were stronger and more coordinated than anything they'd faced before. Around the same time, Selma's combat framework was spreading through every serious party in the country. The idea that a dedicated enchanter changed everything, that the right support mage could multiply the entire party's effectiveness by an order of magnitude. The heroes' party looked at themselves and realized they had no one with any natural aptitude for magic. Nobody could fill the role. So Orhan volunteered. He put down the sword that defined him and picked up a discipline he had no talent for, and he spent years building his own spells from scratch because the traditional ones didn't work right in his hands. He made himself into an enchanter through sheer refusal to stop trying. And it worked. Well enough that the party climbed floors they never would have reached otherwise. And then Oliver watched Selma work, decided that well enough wasn't good enough anymore, and that was the end of it. Orhan doesn't say the last part with anger. He says it the way you talk about weather, something that happened, something that's over. What he says next, though, has an edge to it. He tells the two of them that the heroes' party has no realistic path forward without him, not to the floors that actually matter. He catches himself, stops, decides it's not worth dwelling on. What matters is what's in front of him now. He tells them what he wants. He wants to become the most complete solo adventurer alive, a fighter who can handle any floor, any monster, any situation, without needing anyone else to fill a gap. Not because he hates parties, but because he never wants to be in a position again where his value to others determines whether he gets to keep doing what he loves. Neither Ant nor Bern says anything for a moment. Then Bern refills his cup and they keep eating. What Orhan doesn't know, what none of them know sitting in that tavern, is that the very next day, the heroes' party is going to walk directly into the dungeon that Orhan is about to finish clearing. And the dragon that's been sitting at the 92nd floor is not going to stay there. The next morning, Orhan heads toward the dungeon entrance for the third and final day of the expedition. His party is already waiting, and something has shifted overnight. The energy is different, warmer, more settled. Even Logan carries himself differently, standing a little less like someone waiting to be proven right and a little more like someone who is paying attention. Carol immediately starts elbowing Sophia, trying to get her to say something she clearly rehearsed in her head last night. It turns out that while the two of them were taking a bath the evening before, Sophia admitted out loud that she wants Orhan to stay, to join the Silver Rabbit clan permanently and help them climb. Carol took that as a mission. Sophia turns red and can't get the words out. She doesn't get the chance. Selma calls Orhan over before Sophia can gather herself, and he tells her he'll be back in a moment before walking away. Sophia watches him go and says nothing. On his way to Selma, Orhan passes a cluster of rookies buzzing about something. He catches enough to understand. The heroes' party is in the dungeon today, a trial run with their new enchanter, starting from the 92nd floor. Orhan stops walking for a moment. The 92nd floor, with a brand new party member they've never fought alongside before, on a floor that contains the Black Dragon. He thinks about saying something to someone, then he decides it's not his problem anymore and keeps moving. He's wrong about that, but he doesn't know it yet. On the 92nd floor, Oliver is running his party through warm-up positions, telling them they have nothing to worry about as long as they stay sharp. He turns to the newest member, a green-haired enchanter named Philly, and gives her the floor. The tank tells her to show them what she can do. The party's mage, who apparently hasn't learned anything from watching what happened to the last person they treated this way, opens his mouth and announces that at least Philly isn't some pathetic jack-of-all-trades like Orhan, so they should be fine. Luna says nothing. She hasn't said a word since they arrived. Oliver looks at her and tells himself that once she sees how well this works without Orhan, she'll come around. He's wrong about that too. The floor's mammoth emerges and Oliver charges it immediately, sword drawn, running the same attack pattern that worked perfectly the last time they cleared this floor. The mammoth blocks the strike and pushes him back hard. He retreats behind cover and waits for his buff to kick back in. And that's when he notices it. The buff feels thin, like wearing a coat one size too small. He turns to Philly and asks why the enchantments are cycling down so fast. Philly tells him she hasn't figured out their individual fighting rhythms yet. It'll improve. Oliver stares at her for a moment and then remembers, without wanting to, that Orun had every single one of them mapped out within the first few hours of their very first dungeon run together. He knew their timing, their tendencies, their weak moments before anyone told him anything. Oliver pushes the memory aside. The mammoth unleashes an energy beam at Derek, who moves to block and slips. The beam redirects straight into Anne, who screams at Derek for being an idiot. Derek is equally confused. The block should have been automatic. He does this in his sleep. Something is off, but he can't identify what. Anne steps in and fires her signature flame blasts at the mammoth. They hit. The mammoth barely notices. She stares at her own hands, genuinely confused, and fires again. Same result. Oliver shouts at her to take it seriously. She fires back that she's doing exactly what she always does and getting half the result. Oliver tells Philly to boost Anne's magic damage. Philly does it. Anne fires again. Nothing. Not even a scorch mark. The mammoth responds by nearly taking Anne's head off with a power blast that she only avoids by diving behind a rock. Oliver stands in the middle of the floor and tries to think clearly. Philly's magic is supposed to be stronger than Orhan's. That was the entire argument. That was the reason they made the decision they made. And right now, they are getting beaten by a monster they handled comfortably last time, and he cannot figure out why nothing is working. He turns to Philly again and tells her to track the mammoth's attack patterns and warn the party before each strike. Philly tells him flatly that it's not possible to do that while managing all the other buffs simultaneously. Oliver tells her that's what an enchanter does. That watching the flow of the battle and anticipating what's coming is the entire job. Anne, behind her rock, tells Philly she's completely useless and they made a mistake bringing her in. And then the ground shakes. The black dragon comes up from the depths of the cave, moving like something inevitable, filling the space with a pressure that makes the air feel solid. It descends without warning and crushes the mammoth beneath it like the thing was never there. Oliver stares at it and tells himself they've beaten this creature before. They'll do it again. He holds his ground. Derek steps up and tries to block the dragon's first fireball. The blast hits him like a freight train and sends him sprawling. Anne comes out from behind her rock to counterattack and catches a secondary blast that knocks her out cold. Luna grabs Oliver and tells him they have to leave. Now. Emergency teleport crystal. Right now. Oliver grabs Philly and tells her to buff him, then charges his strongest attack directly into the dragon's breath, blade against fire, and barely comes out standing. He drops to one knee, dazed, the sword trembling in his hand. Luna hauls him up and tells him there is no version of this fight they win today. She has the crystal in her hand. They are leaving. Philly tells them that the emergency teleport will drop them directly into a lower ranked boss room. They'll have to fight their way out. Luna says she doesn't care. They have no other option. Oliver agrees. They grab what's left of the group and open the portal. And in the half second before they step through, the dragon sees the light, dives and follows them in. They land in the lower boss room and spin around and the portal snaps shut behind them. Derek stares at the empty space where the dragon just disappeared and actually exhales. Says at least it went somewhere else. Luna turns to him and tells him very clearly that this is the worst possible outcome. The dragon is now loose in the lower floors. Any adventuring party down here with no warning is going to walk straight into it. They run, all the way to the surface, all the way back to the guild, calling for a forced evacuation of the entire dungeon as they go. And on the way, Luna finally says what she's been holding since the moment she found out Orhan was gone. She tells them, all of them, why they felt so weak down there. It wasn't Philly's fault. It wasn't a bad day. It was the absence of something they had stopped noticing because it had always been there. Orhan's enchantment magic doesn't operate on the same scale as standard support spells. Over the years, working with them every day, he developed a set of original spells that increased the raw power of his magical output by a factor of 50. Not 5, 50. Even Selma, the strongest enchanter alive, tops out at a 10 times multiplier with her best spells. Philly looks like someone just pulled the floor out from under her. Luna tells them the truth plainly. They were never as strong as they thought they were. They were strong because Orun made them strong. Without him, they are a competent group of adventurers, nothing more. Oliver listens to all of it and says nothing. His jaw is tight. His eyes are somewhere far away. And when he finally speaks, he says that he will kill the dragon without Orun. That he doesn't need him. That he will prove it. Nobody argues, they just keep running. Back on the lower floors, Orun tells his party that once they clear the 51st floor, the job is done. Teleportation crystal, everyone goes home, mission complete. His party nods. He looks up at the dark cave ceiling and tells himself the same thing. Everything is going fine. The last day of the expedition is almost over. There is nothing wrong. He can't shake the feeling that there is something very wrong. He doesn't say anything about it, he just keeps moving. Carol fills the silence by asking what kinds of monsters they should expect on the deeper floors ahead. Orun looks at her and reminds her, for what is not the first time, that her job is not to hunt monsters. Her job is to protect the people behind her. The front line is a defensive position, not a personal playground. Carol doesn't love that framing. She tells him that if she personally destroys everything in their path, nobody behind her is ever in danger, which is technically a form of protection. Orun lets out a long breath. Logan cuts in before Carol can dig herself deeper and tells her to pay attention. He mentions that even the legendary adventurer Albert said teamwork was everything. Orun turns toward him at the name, asks whether he means the Albert from the Silver Rabbit clan. Logan lights up. He's surprised someone else actually reads about these things instead of just swinging swords at whatever moves. They briefly share the same frequency, two people who think about combat as a system rather than just a physical act. Orun tells them what he knows about Albert. Undisputed top member of the Silver Rabbit clan, believed to have died on the 92nd floor the previous year fighting the Black Dragon, a loss that hasn't healed. Carol goes quiet. The brightness drains out of her face, and she says something soft and heavy, that Albert died protecting one of his comrades, that he knew his death would erase smiles from people who loved him, and he went ahead anyway. That's why she fights the way she fights. She wants to keep everyone she's responsible for so far from danger that there's never a moment where someone has to make that choice. If she handles everything herself, nobody has to sacrifice anything for anyone. Orun looks at her for a long moment. He understands what she's carrying, and he decides this is not the place to push. Instead, he tells her simply that today he is counting on her. Her face snaps back to life, like a light turning on. Selma appears beside him and tells him quietly that the kids have taken a real liking to him. Orun admits he wasn't sure that would happen after the newspaper. Selma says she knows. She tells him these three have a bright future. They're a handful, but the ceiling is high. Then she shifts the conversation and tells him about Albert, about the hole his death left in the clan that never fully closed, about how the heroes' party stepped into the gap and pulled ahead while the Silver Rabbits were still grieving. Then she asks him directly whether he would consider joining them. He tells her he's honored, but a party doesn't need two enchanters, especially when one of those enchanters is the finest support mage on the continent. Selma goes slightly pink and tells him she didn't mean as an enchanter, she means as a swordsman. She wants to watch him today and see what he actually looks like when he fights. The group split into their separate corridors to search for the path to the boss room. Orun walks with his three rookies into the labyrinth and answers their questions as they go. Logan asks about the deep floors. What does it actually look like past floor 70? Orun tells him the ecosystem shifts completely around level 72. The cave system opens into something that feels less like a dungeon and more like the inside of a frozen mountain. Blizzards, snowstorms, ice lizards that wait in the dark for you to stop moving. He tells them to file it away for later and focus on what's in front of them. What's in front of them is nothing. The 40th floor is completely empty. No sounds, no movement, not a single monster anywhere. Logan notices it first and mentions it aloud. Orun doesn't answer. The knot in his stomach pulls tighter. An empty floor this deep into an active dungeon is not peaceful. It means something has moved through here recently, something large enough that everything else cleared out. Carol announces loudly that she wants to fight something, and right on cue, a blue goblin steps out from behind a rock formation. She launches herself at it before Orhan can get a word out. He reacts instantly, drops a quick agility debuff on the goblin that cuts its speed in half, giving Carol the window she needs to put it down in a single strike. She celebrates. He tells her to stop. He explains it clearly. Blue goblins are not standard goblins. They are fast, they hit hard, and if she had committed to that charge without the debuff slowing it down, the timeline of that exchange looks very different. She could have been hurt, and if she gets hurt, Logan and Sophia are forced out of position trying to cover for her, and suddenly, what should have been a clean fight becomes a crisis. Carol hears it. Orhan softens the lesson by teaching her something in return, a technique he calls active defense. Instead of waiting to absorb or dodge an attack, you read the enemy's body and strike precisely at the moment just before they can launch their own offensive. You interrupt them before they become a threat. Stop the attack before it starts. Carol listens with complete attention, and for once, she doesn't make a joke. Logan shoves her aside before she can process it and asks for his own lesson. Orhan tells him to turn around first. Two wolf-type monsters are already charging from behind. Before they close half the distance, a magical trap Orhan said earlier activates and drives metal spikes through both of them. Logan stares at the trap and then at Orhan, and Orhan tells him that's his lesson. Trap spells set before the fight begins mean your party never has to divide their attention between what's in front of them and what might be coming from behind. You close off the back before you open the front. Logan commits it to memory like he's carving it into stone. Sophia asks for hers. Orhan tells her to start learning how to cast 2 spells simultaneously. She tells him that sounds extremely difficult. He tells her it's less difficult than it sounds and that with practice, any caster can do it. Then he explains why it matters. Powerful single spells take time to charge, and during that charging window, she is completely exposed. If she has a second spell ready to fire while the first one is still building, her downtime between attacks drops to almost nothing. She becomes continuous. She becomes dangerous in a way that raw power alone can't replicate. Sophia looks at him like he just handed her a key to a door she didn't know existed. The empty corridors eventually give way to the boss room at the 50th floor, and the guides converge from their separate paths and come together at the entrance. Selma tells the rookies to stand back and observe. The escorts go in. Orhan enters the room and tells the group to focus on offense. He will handle support. The boss emerges, a giant crab, body like a siege weapon, shell so thick it might as well be a fortress wall. Selma tells Orhan that if he can take out one of the crab's giant claws, the joint is the weak point. The rest of them can finish it from there, and they can all go home. Orhan smiles and walks toward it. The tank calls out a warning about the shell, tells him it's nearly indestructible and he should be careful. Orhan doesn't adjust his pace. He gets close, measures the angle and jumps. His sword comes down on the joint of the giant claw with everything he has, and slices clean through it. The claw hits the floor with a crash that shakes the room. Selma and the others move in and wrap it up without breaking a sweat. The rookies erupt. Logan, Sophia and Carol are clapping, voices bouncing off the cave walls. The kind of release that comes at the end of 3 hard days when everyone is still alive and the goal is finally reached. And then Orhan feels it. Not a sound, not a movement. Something deeper than either of those things. A shift in the air itself. A drop in pressure so sudden and total that it feels like the dungeon just took a breath and held it. The feeling he's been carrying all day crystallizes into certainty in a single second. The wall of reality ahead of them splits open like torn fabric, and the black dragon comes through it. Orhan screams at everyone to run. Nobody moves. The dragon fills the cave with its presence, the way a storm fills the sky, not just physically, but atmospherically, as if the air itself has changed composition. The pressure coming off the creature is not metaphorical, It is a physical force that presses down on every person in the room and pins them in place. The A-rank escorts, seasoned fighters who have cleared dozens of floors and faced things that would end most adventurers, stand completely frozen, eyes fixed on the dragon, bodies refusing to obey the signals their brains are sending. Selma is the only one who manages to think at all, and even she cannot move. She runs through what she knows about the Black Dragon in the back of her mind. The stories, the reports, the accounts from the handful of people who survived encounters with it and lived to write anything down. Every single account says the same thing. The aura alone is enough to end most fights before they start. The creature doesn't need to attack, it just needs to arrive. She knows she has to take command. She knows that if nobody organizes a retreat in the next few seconds, the rookies are going to die standing still. She knows all of this, and she still cannot make her body move. Orun is moving. He doesn't know exactly why he can resist the pressure when nobody else can. Maybe it's the 94 floors. Maybe it's the years of pushing past the point where his body wanted to stop. Maybe it's simply that he has already lost everything once and survived it, and after that, a dragon feels like a problem with a solution, rather than a sentence with no appeal. Whatever the reason, his mind is running clear while everyone around him is locked in place. He works through the options fast. They have already defeated the floor boss, which means the teleportation crystal at the end of the cave is active. If they can reach it, everyone gets out safely. That's the exit. The problem is the distance between here and there, and the fact that nobody is currently capable of running anywhere. For one moment, just one, he considers it. He is fast enough. He could make it to the crystal on his own. He could be out of this cave in 30 seconds and the dragon would turn its attention to the group behind him, and that would not be his fault. He didn't create this situation. He doesn't owe these people his life. He discards the thought before it finishes forming. The version of himself that would do that is not a version he recognizes. He made a promise when he took this job. He is not Oliver. He is not the men who left Sophia against the orc wall and sprinted for the exit. He draws his sword. He turns to the frozen guides and shouts at them. Not a panic shout, but a sharp, commanding one. The kind that cuts through noise and reaches whatever part of a person is still functioning underneath the fear. It works. Selma blinks. The A-rankers shake themselves loose. Selma immediately orders the escorts into defensive formation. Protect the rookies, keep them surrounded, do not let a single one of them take a direct hit. The A-rank mage raises a barrier to absorb the dragon's first attack. The barrier lasts approximately 1 second before the blast punches through it and keeps going. Orun is already moving. He casts a reinforcement spell across the entire group simultaneously, a wide area protective enchantment that shores up what the barrier couldn't hold. It saves them. Everyone is shaken and pale, but nobody is Ash. Orun doesn't stop moving. He circles away from the group, drawing the dragon's focus toward himself, refusing to give the creature a clean angle on the rookies. He pulls out a small dagger and throws it precisely at the dragon's eye. The dragon closes the eye reflexively, an involuntary response, pure survival instinct kicking in before intelligence can override it. The eye closes. The dragon's attention narrows to that point. Orun is already airborne. He launches himself at the dragon's neck and swings with everything he has, a full-strength cut aimed at beheading the creature in a single motion. The blade connects. The cave fills with a shockwave that throws dust and debris in every direction. The guides lose visibility completely. For a few seconds, everyone stands in the settling dust and allows themselves to believe it might be over. The dragon stands back up, completely unharmed. It screams, not from pain, but from rage, and the sound alone rattles loose stones from the ceiling. Orun calls out to the guides without turning around. He tells them to keep the rookies covered on all sides and not let a single one of them get touched. Then he turns to Selma and tells her not to worry. He says it with a calm that has no business existing in this cave, in this situation, in front of this thing. He says he has a plan. Then he runs directly at the dragon. The dragon charges its fire breath and releases a full blast that would incinerate most things it has ever pointed it at. Orun doesn't try to block it. He dodges, moving laterally at full speed, reading the trajectory before the fire even leaves the dragon's mouth, staying just outside the edge of the blast. He starts circling the monster, keeping his movement unpredictable, burning the dragon's attention by making himself the most irritating thing in the room. Every second the dragon is watching him is a second it's not watching the rookies. Selma watches from the defensive perimeter and feels something she hasn't felt in a long time. Genuine uncertainty about whether she made the right call. She let Orun take this on alone, the same dragon that killed Albert. Albert, who was the strongest member of their clan, who went into that fight with a full party behind him and still didn't come out. She tells herself that Orun is different. She tells herself she believes that. She's not entirely sure she does. Orun reads an incoming attack half a second before it arrives and does something that makes Logan grab Sophia's arm without thinking. He reflects it. The dragon's own fire curves in the air and hits the creature square in the chest, absorbed by its scales without damage. But the fact that it happened at all, that a human being redirected dragonfire with a spell cast in real time in the middle of a dodging sequence, is something neither of them has ever seen or heard of. Selma knows the spell, Magical Reflection, one of Orun's original creations designed to return any magical attack at double force. She has studied his spell work for years. Knowing it exists and watching it land are two completely different experiences. The dragon is unscathed. Its scales are too dense. Even a doubled fireball doesn't leave a mark. Orun absorbs that information and adjusts. He raises both hands and begins casting simultaneously across 6 magic circles, a multicast status boost, stacking enhancement after enhancement on himself, doubling his own stats with each successive spell. Selma counts the circles and her mouth opens slightly. 3 is considered exceptional for any caster. 6 is the kind of thing people theorize about in academic settings and assume is impossible in practice. He does all 6 without apparent strain. His body begins to glow, a faint corona of light building at his edges, static gathering around his blade like the air before a lightning strike. Selma realizes she needs to help him. She starts forward. Orun holds up a hand without looking back. He tells her he needs her where she is. The rookies cannot be left without cover. She stops. He turns back to the dragon. The dragon doesn't know what it's looking at anymore. Whatever walked into this cave an hour ago, that was a human being. What's standing in front of it now is something the dragon's instincts don't have a clean category for. Orun is glowing with a light that has no natural source, electricity threading through the air around his body, 6 simultaneous enchantments stacked on top of each other and multiplying his physical and magical output in ways that have never been done before. Selma stands at the perimeter trying to calculate what she's seeing and keeps arriving at numbers that don't make sense. He has doubled his own stats 6 separate times. The mathematics of what that means for his speed, his strength, his reaction time. She can't finish the equation because the result keeps coming back as impossible. The dragon swings its tail in a wide arc that would sweep most things off their feet. Orun disappears. He reappears on a ledge above the dragon's shoulder so quickly that Selma's brain registers it as teleportation before she corrects herself. He simply moved faster than her eyes could track. She is trembling, not from fear of the dragon anymore, from the realization of what she is watching. But Orun is bleeding. A thin line of blood runs from his nose down his upper lip and he doesn't wipe it away because he can't spare the attention. He knows exactly what's happening to him. His enchantments have pushed his physical stats beyond the threshold that a human body is built to sustain. The power is real. The speed, the strength, the reflexes. All of it is real and all of it is working. But his body is still made of the same material it was an hour ago, and that material was not designed to carry this much. Every second he holds these 6 buffs active, the strain increases, and his mana is burning through itself at a rate that can't be sustained. He is effectively running 32 interlocking spells simultaneously. each one feeding the others, the whole system devouring his reserves faster than any single caster should be able to manage. He knows what the equation says. He has one path to winning this fight, and it requires ending it before his body makes the decision for him. He drops from the ledge and charges. The dragon tracks him and fires a barrage of dark magical spears. Not fire this time, something colder and more precise. Each one a targeted projectile aimed at interception rather than area damage. Orun reads the trajectories mid-sprint and starts moving between them, weaving through the gaps with margins so thin that Sophia has to look away and Logan can't. The spears miss him by distances measured in inches. He keeps running. As he closes in, a memory surfaces without his permission. He and Oliver as children, running through the streets of their village without a care in the world, laughing at something neither of them would remember later. The village that was still whole then, still full of people who were alive. He remembers the morning everything changed. The bandits, the fire, the sounds, the helplessness of standing in the middle of destruction with nothing in his hands that could stop any of it. He remembers how small he felt, how furious. He remembers standing in the ash the next morning and helping Oliver bury whoever they could find, and the promise they made to each other over those graves, that they would get strong enough that nothing could ever be stolen from them again. Oliver broke that promise long before he broke the other one. Orun uses the memory the way he uses everything, as fuel. He throws a fireball at the dragon's face as a distraction, something bright and loud to pull the creature's focus for half a second, and drives his sword at the dragon's neck with the full weight of all 6 enchantments behind it. The blade hits, and this time it cuts. The sharpness enhancement on the sword, combined with everything else stacked on top of it, finds a gap in the scales and pushes through, opening a wound at the dragon's neck that makes the creature stagger sideways and crash to the ground with an impact that shakes the cave. Logan and Sophia grab each other. The escorts break formation just enough to look. Selma covers her mouth. The dragon gets back up. Orun doesn't stop moving. His buffs are starting to cycle down, and he hits them again immediately. Whatever mana he has left, he pours it back into the system and keeps the machine running. He sets a trap behind the dragon, a wall that springs up the moment the creature tries to back away, boxing it in, denying it the space to reset. The dragon pushes against the wall, and Orun is already in the air, bringing his sword down in his most powerful attack yet. A technique called magical convergence, the same ability Oliver uses, but where Oliver channels it into pure offense and leaves defense to everyone else, Orun has always run both sides simultaneously. His version of the blade is all black, mana compressed to a density that bends the light around it, and he drives it into the dragon with everything he has left. The impact is enormous. The dragon goes down again, harder this time, and stays down long enough that the escorts actually start to celebrate. Logan pumps his fist. Sophia makes a sound she'll be embarrassed about later. The dragon stands back up. It doesn't look like something that should still be standing. It looks like something that has decided to stand on principle. It fills its lungs and fires its most powerful attack, the one that has ended the careers and the lives of more adventurers than anyone has bothered to count. Orun has heard it described as death given a direction. He watches it charge and gets ready. The spears come at him in a coordinated pattern. He bobs through the first wave, reflects the second wave back, uses a quick mana block, a solid platform of compressed energy materializing under his feet at exactly the right moment, to change his angle mid-air and make the third wave whiff completely. He charges his final convergence attack as he pushes off the mana block, pouring the last of everything into the blade, and rockets toward the dragon's head. The dragon hardens its scales at the last second. The same trick as before, a full body hardening that turned Orun's earlier strike into nothing. His sword hits the scales and shatters. The blade breaks apart in his hands, pieces spinning away into the dark. He lands and stands there, holding a broken hilt, breathing hard, and looks at the dragon standing across from him. The dragon looks back at him. Both of them are on their last legs, and both of them know it. He drops the hilt. He opens his hands and pulls the darkness around him inward, draws the ambient mana from the air, from the stone, from every surface within reach, and funnels it all through himself into a single focused point directly in front of him. The energy takes shape. It becomes a sword, not metal, not enchanted steel, but pure converged mana. A blade made entirely of compressed magical force that he grabs with both hands and holds in front of him like an answer to a question the dragon asked by still being alive. The dragon launches its final barrage. Orun runs directly into it. He deflects the first 3 spears with blocking magic cast in real time. He reflects the next 2 back at the dragon. He dodges the last one by a margin that leaves a scorch mark on his sleeve. He uses the reflection from one of his earlier deflection spells as a launch point, pushes off it like a ramp, blasting himself upward and forward with everything his failing body still has, and brings the mana sword down on the dragon's head with his most powerful strike. The explosion swallows the entire cave. White, then dust, then silence. Selma moves through the haze before it settles, scanning the floor, the walls, the space where the dragon was. She finds Orun standing in the middle of it all, leaning against the mana sword where it has embedded itself in the stone, breathing in long, uneven pulls, blood on his face, every enchantment burned out. The dragon is down. Not stunned, not recovering. Down. She stands there and looks at him and understands that she is witnessing something that has never happened before. The Black Dragon, the creature that killed Albert, that has claimed more lives than any other monster in the known dungeon system, that entire parties of elite adventurers have tried to defeat and failed, has just been killed by one person. A person who walked into this cave as a guide for rookie adventurers and ended the fight without a party, without backup, and without a single spell left in reserve. Orun breathes. He doesn't celebrate. He doesn't announce anything. He just stands there and holds himself up and breathes. He doesn't realize yet that he just made history.